In my time of listening to people tell their stories of ROCD and relationship anxiety, I've come to realize that some of the themes are very similar. One of the things I hear again and again is this feeling or this worry that I don't love my partner, or I don't love my partner as much as they love me, or I don't love my partner as much as I should. And people often feel this because they look at the feeling they have and it just doesn't feel that exciting. It doesn't feel that intense. It's like they care about this person, but they're not obsessed with them. They're not going crazy about them, trying to spend every moment of their time with them. They just have a good time together. They're attracted, but it's not like they lose control of themselves. And part of them feels like that just isn't enough, is it? It should be stronger than this. It should be more dramatic. It should be more captivating. But are these missing powerful feelings of attraction, obsession, and limerence really any sign that a relationship is going to work or be happy? I've had relationships where I've been obsessed with the girl, and at the time it seemed it was mutual, but then their feelings changed and that was the end of that. And I've had the most beautiful words said to me by some women who never followed up on them with action when given the opportunity. I think a great many people don't really want love. They want to be made to love, or at least made to feel that they love. But that isn't the same thing as love. I want to read to you a part of the book, The Road Less Travelled, by the late psychiatrist M. Scott Peck. In this part of the book, he's talking about a psychological process called cathexis. This is the process by which we emotionally invest in someone or something. When we cathect a person, often as an unconscious process, we direct our mental and emotional energy towards them, and in doing so, make them become important to us. So here's what he wrote. Love is not a feeling. Many, many people possessing a feeling of love, and even acting in response to that feeling, act in all manner of unloving and destructive ways. On the other hand, a genuinely loving individual will often take loving and constructive action towards a person he or she consciously dislikes, actually feeling no love toward the person at the time, and perhaps even feeling the person repugnant in some way. The feeling of love is the emotion that accompanies the experience of cathecting. Cathecting, it will be remembered, is the process by which an object becomes important to us. Once cathected, the object, commonly referred to as a love object, is invested with our energy as if it were a part of ourselves. The misconception that love is a feeling exists because we confuse cathecting with loving. This confusion is understandable since they are similar processes, but there are also striking differences. First of all, as has been pointed out, we may cathect any object, animate or inanimate, with or without a spirit. Thus a person may cathect the stock market or a piece of jewelry and may feel love for these things. Second, the fact that we have cathected another person does not mean that we care a whit for that person's spiritual development. The dependent person, in fact, usually fears the spiritual development of the cathected spouse. The mother who insisted upon driving her adolescent son to and from school clearly cathected the boy. He was important to her, but his spiritual growth was not. Thirdly, the intensity of our cathexis frequently has nothing to do with wisdom or commitment. Two strangers may meet in a bar and cathect each other in such a way that nothing, not previously scheduled appointments, promises made, or family stability is more important for the moment than their sexual consummation. Finally, our cathexis may be fleeting and momentary. Immediately following their sexual consummation, the just mentioned couple may find each other unattractive and undesirable. We may decathect something as soon as we have cathected it. Genuine love, on the other hand, implies commitment and the exercise of wisdom. When we are concerned for someone's spiritual growth, we know that a lack of commitment is likely to be harmful, and that commitment to that person is probably necessary for us to manifest our concern effectively. It is for that reason that commitment is the cornerstone of the psychotherapeutic relationship. It is almost impossible for a patient to experience significant personality growth without a therapeutic alliance with the therapist. In other words, before the patient can risk major change, he must feel the strength and security that come from believing that the therapist is the patient's constant and stable ally. For this alliance to occur, the therapist must demonstrate to the patient, usually over a considerable length of time, the consistent and steadfast caring that can arise only from a capacity of commitment. This does not mean that the therapist always feels like listening to the patient. Commitment means that the therapist listens to the patient, like it or not. It is no different in a marriage. In a constructive marriage, just as in a constructive therapy, the partners must regularly, routinely, and predictably attend to each other's end of the relationship, no matter how they feel. And as has been mentioned, couples, sooner or later, always fall out of love. And it is the moment when the mating instinct has run its course that the opportunity for genuine love begins. It is when the spouses no longer feel like being in each other's company always, when they would rather be elsewhere in some other time, that the love begins to be tested and will be found to be present or absent. This is not to say that the partners in a stable, constructive relationship, such as intensive psychotherapy or marriage, do not cathect each other and the relationship itself in various ways. They do. What it does say is that genuine love transcends the matter of cathexis. When love exists, it does so with or without cathexis and with or without a loving feeling. It is easier, indeed, it is fun to love with cathexis and the feeling of love, but it is possible to love without cathexis and without loving feelings, and it is in the fulfillment of this possibility that genuine and transcendent love is distinguished from simple cathexis. The key word in this distinction is will. I've defined love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Genuine love is volitional rather than emotional. The person who truly loves does so because of a decision to love. This person has made a commitment to be loving whether or not the loving feeling is present. If it is, so much the better, but if it isn't, the commitment to love, the will to love, still stands and is still exercised. Conversely, it is not only possible but necessary for a loving person to avoid acting on feelings of love. I may meet a woman who strongly attracts me, whom I feel like loving, but because it would be destructive to my marriage to have an affair, I will say vocally or in the silence of my heart, I feel like loving you, but I am not going to. Similarly, I may refuse to take on a new patient who is most attractive and is likely to succeed in therapy because my time is already committed to other patients, some of whom may be considerably less attractive and more difficult. My feelings of love may be unbounded, but my capacity to be loving is limited. I therefore must choose the person on whom to focus my capacity to love, towards whom to direct my will to love. True love is not a feeling by which we are overwhelmed. It is a committed, thoughtful decision. The common tendency to confuse love with the feeling of love allows people all manner of self-deception. An alcoholic man whose wife and children are desperately in need of his attention at that very moment may be sitting in a bar with tears in his eyes telling the bartender, "I really love my family." People who neglect their children in the grossest of ways, often more than not, will consider themselves the most loving parents. It is clear there may be a self-serving quality in this tendency to confuse love with the feeling of love. It is easy and not at all unpleasant to find evidence of love in one's feelings. It may be difficult and painful to search for evidence of love in one's actions. But because true love is an act of will that often transcends ephemeral feelings of love or cathexis, it is correct to say love is as love does. Love and non-love, as good and evil, are objective and not purely subjective phenomena. So it isn't in this investment of emotional energy that we are caught up into love. We cannot confuse the feeling of love with love itself, or else all we're doing is emotional masturbation. And I think that's an appropriate term, because enjoying the feeling that we are loving when we are not being loving, when we are not doing love in our actions, in how we treat the other person, it's something that's going on in us, nothing to do with the other person. And also there's the matter of feelings coming and going. There will be times in your relationship when you do not feel like loving someone, and yet love is the commitment to keep being there for them, to keep loving them. We're not bouncing from one emotional high to another. That's no way to live a life. Otherwise, we're just at the mercy of our whims. If you want a relationship that lasts, you need something stronger than dependence on a temporary rush of oxytocin and dopamine. It's all well and good to enjoy it while it lasts, but it won't always be there. It'll come sometimes, but not all the time. So you need something more reliable. Not a bigger high, but something in which you find meaning in loving the other person, even on days when you don't feel like loving them. You have to rest your self-concept as a loving person upon keeping your commitment, not waiting for a feeling. You don't wait for some bright light to shine into your eyes. And the more you try to make yourself feel something, to make a feeling happen, the less likely you are to find that feeling. But remember, the focus is not on how you feel. That's not what matters. That's not the diagnostic criteria here. You look at what's in front of you in your real life experience, and you also think, you use your brain. What do they need? What is best for them? And not just what you feel like. And this is what true love is. This is what growing up is. And this is what a love that will last is. Hopefully this video has been useful to someone. Please leave a comment to let me know what you think, and consider sharing this video with someone that it could help. Thank you very much, and see you next time.